and chill, man. Hey, look,
we just had a show on weed
marijuana
the other day. We're all fine to
Yeah,
smoke.
I will respond to his points. I wasn't trying to evade his points. Sorry
talk.
if I didn't go down the experiment route. I apologize for that.
Well, let's
I
clear something up real quick here first, because I don't think that there's going to be an experiment. Let me just ask flat out, Rumpus, is there an experiment that you're going to be able to show him that can accurately hold water to a sphere? I don't think that's going to be the case. So I want to hit that and then move on so we can go further into the conversation.
Well, that's right.
I don't want that to be a sticking point.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Well, I demonstrated earlier that there's the thing when you drop it. Every time you drop a pencil, you're seeing gravity in action. When you get on a set of scales, you're seeing gravity in action. So we know there is a force there. And we know that water is no different to you. It's just like you're attracted to the center of the Earth, so is the water molecules. So they are going to behave like everything else and going to be attracted. I mean, I thought I'd cover this point earlier, I suppose, and attracted towards the center of the Earth. So that's why water will accumulate around the surface. If it's free to move around the sphere that I showed earlier, it's going to try and get as close as it can to the center of the Earth. And if the Earth is a sphere, then it will fall around the edge. If it was arranged in a sort of column, it would all fall around to try and get as close to the center of the Earth as it could. So I can demonstrate to you by the mere fact of the existence of gravity that there's a force acting on you, and similarly, this force, therefore, I hope you would accept, is acting on water. So if you hold water up, it falls to the ground. So there's a force acting on it. So if you accept there's a force acting on it, and you know something about physics, you know that if I had a column of water, that every bit of that water is going to try and find the nearest point to the center of the Earth, which means it's going to then go around the side of the Earth, go around the surface of the Earth. So the experiment I'm saying to you is get on some scales. That proves or put some water on some scales. That demonstrates there's a force acting on it. And if you know a bit about physics and the way things behave when there's a force acting on them, you can show through logic that therefore that water will then surround whatever's attracting it. So similarly, you could have a similar experiment, for instance, if you had an electrostatic charge on something and you had oppositely charged. So things like magnets, if you had oppositely charged magnets and you put them on a ball, they would try and get to the center of the charged object, and certainly electrostatically they would if you pulled charged polystyrene things or something, if you know what expanded polystyrene is. So you can demonstrate the principle that things will try and form an equipotential surface. So, but obviously to do that, unfortunately, you need something as big as the Earth to have that force. And so, unfortunately, I can't put the Earth as a black hole into an experiment. You have to accept, hopefully you do, that the Earth is very big, and unfortunately the gravitational forces are a direct function of the size of the object you're dealing with.
Right.
So
that's
the
problem that I have, though. That's the problem that I have.
Let me interject real quick, because I want to make sure this point is not lost, Wotan. What Rumpus said about experimenting with something like the Earth, what I think you're kind of asking is kind of an unfair question, because what you're saying is, in order to demonstrate that the water can stick on a rotating Earth, you need to make a rotating Earth and then see if water sticks on it. That's not how it's done in science, obviously.
Yeah, we want to move past that, Wotan. Can we do that and have a
that's
conversation?
My baseline, and anything that you say after that, I'm just not going to believe you.
Hold on.
If you don't have an experiment proving what you believe.
Well, we do.
Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you this question then. Is that your only sticking point for why you believe that the Earth is flat?
No, I have others.
Okay,
well,
so
I'd like to address this exact experiment, because you do, hopefully, Wotan, you'll accept that you can do a small scale experiment and scale it up.
Well,
so if I can demonstrate to you in an experiment that masses attract one another, and therefore that generates a much smaller force, but it's dependent on the mass, I can then say to you, well, look, if I then make that mass 200 million trillion times bigger, you're going to get a force that's 200 trillion times bigger, and therefore that would account for why water would then be attracted to it. Because I can demonstrate the water, a single molecule of water obeys these laws of being attracted to mass. But obviously, with little masses inside of a little experiment, it'll only be a very small force. So surely, hopefully, you could accept that you can scale this up. If I make the masses bigger, the force goes up. And
how do you know it's going to behave the same way? How do you know water is going to behave the same way in the small scale that it is in the large scale? You don't know that. You assert that. You extrapolate off that, but you don't actually know that. You just assert it without any evidence, without any experiments. So that's why I don't believe you.
Well, we do have an experiment.
To be fair, you're asserting that the Earth is flat without much evidence as well, correct?
Well,
I'd just like to tackle
the flat Earth is the null hypothesis. So
that's not a null hypothesis.
No, it's not.
No, it is.
No,
it's not. It's usually not a null hypothesis.
Hold on. Well, let me just tackle the point. Before we get caught about null hypotheses, we can demonstrate via modifications of the Cavendish experiment, etc., that masses attract one another. And that is also true of water. So we can demonstrate the water. Sorry.
Which has been debunked. It's the most ridiculous
stuff. No, it hasn't been debunked at all. There are little kits you can buy to do the Cavendish experiment yourself in your own room. Physics experiments around the world in universities do this every day. It's absolutely proved, and you can even prove it yourself with a kit that you can buy.
No, you can't.
So you can buy kits to do this yourself and demonstrate the effect in your own house. And so we can demonstrate that it is proportional to the mass. Therefore, we know the water also, by looking on scales and in a very clever experiment, you need to actually demonstrate the water. You can have a jug of water that you could replace the balls with and demonstrate the force exists there. So we can do an experiment to show that this force exists. Now, then we can double up the size of the balls and things, and then say it becomes double the size of the force if you double the mass is involved, or the product of the masses.
So let me ask you both here. Look at as Jared in the live feed, a friend clearly points out, these experiments could be done in microgravity, and they probably have been done in microgravity type situations. But Wotan, why is it that you think that if you have a sphere, would you agree that that sphere has mass, and if it has mass, it there has gravity? Or do you, putting aside the experiment, do you disagree with the fundamental concept that things with mass have gravity?
Of course, I disagree with the fundamental concept that mass has gravity. The experiment
that you're looking for makes no difference, because the point needs to be going to your fundamental misunderstanding of physics, and that's what I think Rumpus should address.
Well,
let me finish. If you don't accept the physics, then there is no experiment that can show you what you're looking for. I think the question goes to is, why do you think that mass doesn't have gravity? What experiment have you done to demonstrate mass doesn't have gravity?
Well, let's forget that for a second.
Hang on, Kyle. Hang on.
Hang on, Kyle. We're not going to get past this.
Kyle. I'm serious.
No. We're not going to have a type of show where we spend the entire point on one sticking point. Okay.
But this is a very fundamental thing.
I can get into it briefly.
Wotan, listen to me for a second. Okay. I want to ask you a question. I want you to be honest with me and serious, right?
I tried, guys. I'm sorry. I tried.
We asked you to come on here to have a discussion about your reasons for why you believe the Earth is flat. And although I know that you're not going to in any way agree that experiment can be done, no matter how much we try to harp on it, it's going to be a waste of time. You're not going to concede that point. So I can see that. But you can't come into this thinking that that's the only sticking point. You know what I mean? Like, you want people to take you seriously, I'm sure. Because you guys, we mentioned before the show that the worst thing you can admit to being is a flat earther. So in order to bolster a claim of being taken seriously, you can't just come in and say, well, you can't prove this experiment, therefore I don't have to prove any other points. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to kind of come to the table with a thought-provoking argument. And we're not here like dogging on you or calling you stupid. Rumpus is showing you science and things that can be proven. I know that you won't concede that, but we're coming at this. What?
I appreciate all that he's doing. I appreciate all the science and stuff that he does. It's just, I don't agree with the gravity and all that.
Surely, so you're rejecting. You think all these physicists and all these experimenters who've shown this, documented it, and it's been accepted in scientific literature for hundreds of years. You're just going to say that all these professionals are wrong.
Yes, he is.
That's why I think it's very critical to get to the point. The heart of the matter is this: mass and gravity. And if you have an experiment that shows mass is not related to gravity, then you have a case.
Well,
I think is what this whole discussion boils down to, that very small crux: mass relating to gravity.
I have a thought experiment that mass does not correlate with gravity.
Awesome.
So
go ahead.
Gravity, mass, what it does, it bends space-time. Do you agree?
Yes.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so what you're saying is that, first of all, space has no physical properties. Space is not a physical thing. Space is just volume. It's just area. It's just...
Well, it does have properties. It has dimensions.
It has dimensions. Right, but it's not a physical thing. It's not something that can...
Well, dimensions are physical.
It's a way of explaining an area.
And before you get too far,
I'm talking about space. Empty space is not a physical
Wotan,
thing.
before you go too far into this reasoning, I will tell you up front, I'm a scientific instrumentalist, not a realist. I don't know about Rumpus. So whether space-time or not is a physical construct is irrelevant to me if the theory of gravity works. If I can use it to explain and use it to predict things, that's all I care about.
Well, the very precipice of gravity is that it bends space-time, and space-time is not a physical thing. Space is not physical. Time is time. No, can I explain?
Sure.
So space is not physical, and time is also not physical. Time is a concept only. Time is a human concept. Time does not exist. Time is a concept. Time only exists when, even if you have a perfect void, and you have no matter at all, and it's just you in this void, time doesn't exist. The only way time exists is if you have like a water droplet dropping from a faucet, and it drops from the faucet at a predictable rate, and then you could say, oh well, when I read this book, it takes me 20 water droplets to read this page from this book. That's time, but it's not a physical
thing. That's contentious. That's your opinion.
That's actually a philosophical question, Wotan. I mean, do you know the difference between Platonic time and reductionism when it comes to time? Because there are different theories of how time is thought of. There's a reductionist approach and there's a Platonic approach. Do you know the difference?
No.
Okay. It's not relevant that he does. Let's get back to the flat Earth discussion.
Well, I just want to get to the core of my understanding of why I
assertions, but he's not understanding that his assertions are merely assertions. He's saying these things are fact, and they're not.
You're not providing an argument to support your assertions.
Right, exactly.
What you're doing with space-time is you are metamorphizing, you're changing the nature of space and time, and you're making this amalgamation, abomination, and you're saying that it's a physical thing that can be acted on by mass, by matter, which just goes against every single law of physics. Something that is not physical cannot be acted upon by something that is physical.
Yeah,
time is a constant.
That makes no sense.
You can't
space-time
bend
is a physical
time.
thing.
How do you bend time?
Because it's a physical thing.
It's not a physical thing. You can't touch time.
But we can change it. I mean, are you aware if you go quickly, the time goes more slowly? Also, we can show that if you go, for instance, to the top of the Eiffel Tower, the time goes more more quickly. Are you aware of these effects on time? Sorry?
It's a concept.
Are you aware that time it obviously must be a thing if it can be changed by gravity and changed by speed? It's not obviously just a concept.
That it can be changed by gravity.
So I said again, sorry.
You assert that it can be changed by gravity.
We've got measurements.
We've seen it changed by gravity. We have
measured with atomic clocks. With atomic clocks, you can go to the top of a tall building and show there's a differential. The GPS system has got that as its fundamental heart, that the time taken for atomic clocks to work in satellites in space go more quickly than they do on the ground. This is a fundamental
problem. Do you not see the problem that you're running into? You're relying on satellites which don't exist, which are totally fake, and you're saying that we've measured.
I mentioned
something in
now,
space.
There's an interesting point.
Not another rabbit hole.
I want to finish off this. We have proof, as I said. Hold on, we got proof through experimentation that going to the top of a tall building, time goes more quickly than it does at the base of the building. That has been proved, demonstrated, verified, repeated. It's established scientific fact.
You can assert that.
No, it's not. I'm not asserting something. I've got the whole body of science is saying this. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have been involved in proving this, and it is verified, repeated by experiment and supported by theory as well.
So you're bending time.
You are denying hundreds of thousands of experimenters the results and the theory behind it. You're just basically denying science.
Well, Rumpus, how about we ask though? We
have somebody that's going to join here in just a few that I think will kind of get this on a track that we want to.
So let's just ask real quick. So we do know, Wotan, would you agree that atomic clocks on Earth and higher in altitude do measure different times? Do you agree with that? You've done those experiments. It's a fact. You at least agree with that, right?
I've never witnessed it. You can link it if you want.
So
we accept for arguendo that we've done these experiments because I guarantee that we have. But I mean,
these experiments have been done, Wotan. You can't deny them. You haven't done any experiments.
Yeah, you
so
have.
What does altitude have to do with like gravity?
I'll explain.
I don't understand how.
Yeah, let Rumpus explain then.
I'll explain. The force of gravity, once you go above the surface of the Earth, the force of gravity decreases. So as you go higher, the gravitational field becomes less intense. Because the gravitational field affects the passage of time, therefore, with decreasing gravitational field, you get an increase in time. The Earth is effectively slowing down time. If you were near a bigger planet, nearer the sun, and obviously near a black hole is the classic case, it slows down time so much to make it crawl. But the Earth does a little bit. Even on the moon, it does a little bit. But the further you are away from a gravitational body, time goes further. This is an established, measured, scientific fact, and you have done nothing. You